We're on our journey home. We're on our journey home. We're on our journey home.
The poem says, so when at times the mob is swayed to carry praise or blame too far, we may choose something like a star to stay our minds on and be stayed. Now, following this grueling election season, there are mobs and there are crowds carrying their praise and their blame too far. I'd like to lead you in a little exercise. I'm going to need a few helpers. So if I could get two people to just come forward. You're not going to have to say anything. You're just going to need to stand here. I need two bodies. There's one. All right. One courageous soul. Can I get another? Yes. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. All right. So if you'll just stand here. Yeah, come on forward. Beautiful. And I like that because you're about to be divided. Okay, now you stand over here, facing her, and you stand over here. Yeah, sure, you can stay right there. So here's what I'd like. You're going to be for us a Donald Trump supporter, okay? All right. You don't have to say anything. You're going to be a Hillary Clinton supporter, okay? All right. So here's what I need, and now I need some help from the rest of you because I want to ask about some stereotypes that we might have of each of these two people. All right. So, like, what would be a stereotype that there might be for, let's say, a Donald Trump supporter? Not, of course, not anything that you might be thinking, but just that other people out in the world might be thinking. So, what's something that some people think about? What's that? Misogynist. Would you come forward for a second and just, and then would you just come forward right now and stand right in front of our Trump supporter right here? Just you can actually face this way.
Okay.
All right. Misogynistic. What's a stereotype that people have about a Hillary Clinton supporter? Baby killer. Oh, please come. I'm sorry, I'll get you in here next. Baby killer, can you come forward and stand up here? What's another one that we might have someone might have about a Trump, not we, but someone might have about a Trump supporter? Prejudice. Okay, Sherry, you come here and stand right there. Do we have the baby killer? Okay, please come forward. Another one for a Hillary Clinton supporter. Warmonger. Yes, could you come forward if you could and stand here? What's another one for a Trump? What is it? Homophobic. Yes, please come forward if you would and just stand right here. And what are you again? Warmonger. Yes, Hillary the hawk, very much so. So what else? What's another one for Hillary that people, Hillary supporter? Sorry? I'm sorry, I can't hear you. Say it again. Homophobic? Yes. So that would be for Trump. So would you stand in front of Sherry? I want one more for Hillary. Arrogant. Yes. Come on forward. Very arrogant and elitist supporters of Hillary. Yes. So. And we could just keep going because there's a lot out there, and I heard other ones, but just for the interest of time, if I could just get an elitist liberal to please stand in front of, yes, please. All right. And now, I just want to ask, now, can you two see each other right now? It's really hard to see each other, isn't it? Because you have to look between all these stereotypes, all these ideas about each other. Now, if you two, will you just take a step over on this side, away from all those prejudices? Not you all, but just the two. Thank you. You stereotypes have to stay where you are. And now you can you see each other now? So when you step aside, let those stereotypes kind of go, and then you can start to see each other. Okay, thank you all. Let's give them a round of applause. We thank you guys. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. So the golden rule that is found in, I think, every religion in some way or another involves love your neighbor. And the question, of course, is, who is my neighbor? And what does love require of us? And the exercise we just did, it's called the stereotype wall. And it demonstrates how easy it is to make assumptions about other people to the point that we no longer see them anymore. We become characters to one another rather than real people, and it's dehumanizing. It's dehumanizing to label Mexican immigrants as rapists. It's dehumanizing to label Muslims as terrorists, and it's also dehumanizing to label Trump supporters as bigots or Hillary supporters as baby killers. Of course, there are people in these different groups who might reflect some of the ideas that then become a label for everybody in the group. And the problem with these stereotypes is that it takes the actions of some or the ideas of some and it places it upon everybody, and then we end up going around missing each other because we oversimplify one another and we don't pay attention. So my job this morning is to complicate all of our thinking about what's going on and who our neighbor is. Because it turns out our neighbor, the question of who is our neighbor and what does love demand of us, is a central question and should be for each one of us. I spent the past week in Germany, as it turns out. It was my first time in Germany, and I loved it. It was an incredible country. I was speaking to European Unitarian Universalists from all over Europe, and I had a phenomenal time. But it was poignant there because my people are Jewish on my father's side of the family. And as I stood at the Jewish cemetery in Frankfurt, and I looked at tens of thousands of grave markers of Jews of all ages, including children, who were killed in the Holocaust, the names included many names I knew. They included family members of friends, and one marker was for a person whose last name was Lavin. And as I stared at this name, it's so close to my own family name, it sent chills through my body. And needless to say, I have no tolerance for stereotyping and discrimination and for scapegoating any minority group and appealing to the prejudices and discontents of the majority by saying that if we can finally get rid of these bad people out of our country, that will fix our problems. After World War I, Germany was facing enormous challenges. There was a sense of defeat and stagnation and loss of greatness. Hitler used the slogan, "Let's make Germany great again." And he scapegoated the Jews and other minorities as the source of their current problems. And he promised to rid Germany of these problematic and dangerous people. Now here we are in America at the beginning of the 21st century. We are facing massively complex issues related to globalization, technological advances, and a changing economy that is exacerbating poverty and concentrating wealth in fewer and fewer hands. And it's a lot easier for people to point the finger at one group or another than to try to understand these enormous geopolitical and global economic challenges. Here's who some of our neighbors are. Some neighbors who put Mr. Trump in office are people who are not racist, they're not hateful, they're not bigots, but they're sick and tired of the economic and political and media status quo, and they wanted to shake things up. As Bernie Sanders wrote in yesterday's New York Times, working families watch as politicians get campaign financial support from billionaires and corporate interests, and then ignore the needs of ordinary Americans. They work longer hours for lower wages, and they see decent paying jobs go to China and Mexico and to some other low-wage countries. Many of these once beautiful rural towns across America have been depopulated. Their downtown stores are shuttered, and their kids are leaving home because there are no jobs. Many have nothing in the bank as they head into retirement. Too many families exist in despair as drugs and alcohol and suicide cut life short for a growing number of people. They are wanting bold and radical new leadership in hope that real changes can happen. Some neighbors voted for Mr. Trump because they saw Hillary's commitment to continuing Obama's policies as what Kathleen Parker called a suicide agenda to a majority of Americans, especially those whose lives have not improved during the economic recovery of the past 8 years. And the idea of 4 more years, like the last 8, were too much to bear. There were also people who were voting against a foreign policy that saw the Islamic State expanding rather than being brought to defeat. Others are strong conservatives who saw Hillary's embrace of much of Bernie Sanders' socialist platform as something they could never, ever support. And others voted for Mr. Trump because they feel resentful of the continued racial discord of our country during the Obama presidency when they had hoped for things to be getting better. We have neighbors who would rather chew on tinfoil than attend a Trump rally, but who voted for him because they would not support having a more liberal Supreme Court. Some of our neighbors are undoubtedly among the 4 out of 5 white evangelicals who voted for Mr. Trump. Some of them saw his words and his demeanor and his lifestyle as profoundly problematic, but their overriding concern is stopping abortions, protecting religious freedom, and preserving traditional views on gay and transgender issues. And they want a conservative court. They saw 2 highly flawed candidates to choose from, and were picking the one most likely to deliver that outcome. Many were indeed not voting for Trump, they rather were voting for a conservative Supreme Court. Some wonder how conservative Christians, of all people, could vote for a man who was married 3 times and who seems to have trouble respecting women, not to mention others. But keep in mind that Christians read a Bible that is chock full of flawed leaders who, despite cheating, lying, stealing, and all sorts of sexual and other sins, still are appointed by God to lead the people. King David was an adulterer and a murderer and is considered the greatest head of state in the Bible. Some conservative neighbors find it disingenuous that their liberal counterparts hail the accomplishments and leadership of John F. Kennedy, who was a womanizer, and Lyndon Johnson, who had a very foul and abusive mouth, but who cannot see past those qualities in a conservative politician. Many of the 60 million neighbors who voted for Mr. Trump did so for many, many reasons, and certainly are not all bigots or hateful. People who want a world that's unfair. To reduce them to such a view is itself bigoted and ignorant. And it's hateful. Now, at the same time, it cannot be denied that Mr. Trump used strong rhetoric and proposed policies that were focused on keeping Muslims out of our country, rounding up and deporting Mexicans, and using police tactics that are considered racially biased, such as stop and frisk. And he called women names like pigs and dogs and criticized them for their looks. He mocked a disabled reporter. He insulted Muslim American parents of an American soldier who died fighting for our country. So, if we're talking about our neighbors, some of our neighbors include David Duke, the former imperial wizard of the Ku Klux Klan, who tweeted that Mr. Trump's victory was, quote, one of the most exciting nights of my life, and tweeted, our people have played a huge role in electing Trump. And also said, anyone telling you this was a vote for unity is a liar, and they know it. Since the election, we've heard of a department store window in Philadelphia, vandals spray painted Sieg Heil 2016 with the name Trump written in swastikas. In a high school bathroom in Minnesota, the words "Make America Great Again" and "Go Back to Africa" were written on the wall. There have been hundreds of reports of verbal and physical harassment of Muslims and Latinos and other minorities. On Thursday night, a member of our church, Kyla Torres, a young mother with a 7-year-old daughter, stopped at Walmart on her way here to provide childcare for our program. And when a man standing in line in front of her, who was telling the cashier how glad he was that Trump won, said, "You know why they're crying, don't you? It's because," and at this point he turned and waved his finger to point at Kayla and the woman behind her, "all of these roaches that have come over are getting ready to get kicked back across the wall." The woman behind Kayla started crying. The man couldn't have cared less as he took his seat and said, "I'm tired of paying for their shh," a word that rhymes with spit. And then he leaned into Kayla, looked her right in the eyes, and said, "Stuff's about to go down in 2017. You watch." Our neighbors include families who are living in fear of being torn apart, as some of their members could be deported. Just this week, a series of social media messages were sent to African American freshmen at the University of Pennsylvania depicting lynching and designed to intimidate and put fear into the heart of these young Americans. It was done by a member of their own generation. We learned last night that the emails originated here in Oklahoma from a student from the University of Oklahoma who David Boren immediately kicked out. There is some credible evidence, although it's not yet confirmed, that a University of Tulsa student was also involved. These two are our neighbors. Something has incited this kind of freedom to say these things and do these things. And this is real. Ryan Lenz of the Southern Poverty Law Center explains that to say that this was just another election is blindly ignorant to just how viscerally this campaign ripped open the wounds of racial resentment in this country. As the USA Today reported on Saturday, for many people, this election has created fear for those who are not straight and white because it came on top of a very intense year. Just 5 months ago, 49 people were gunned down at a gay nightclub in Orlando in the deadliest attack on U.S. soil since September 11th, 2001. A month later, Alton Sterling and Philando Castile were shot and killed by police in separate incidents within a day of one another. Terrence Crutcher came soon after. Every 2 minutes, an American is sexually assaulted, according to the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network. More than 1,114 people were victims of hate crimes because of their sexual orientation or gender identity, according to the FBI. So we find ourselves asking, who is our neighbor, and what does love require of us? We're told the question was put to Jesus in the Gospel of Luke, chapter 10. On one occasion, a lawyer stood up to test Jesus. "Teacher," he asked, "what must I do to inherit eternal life?" "What is written in the law?" Jesus replied. "How do you read it?" And the lawyer answered, love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. You've answered correctly, Jesus replied. Do this and you will live. But he wanted to justify himself, so he asked Jesus, and who is my neighbor? In reply, Jesus said, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho, where he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, they beat him and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going along down that same road, and when he saw the man, he passed on the other side. So too a Levite, when he came to the place he saw him, he passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him and he bandaged his wounds, pouring oil and wine on them, and then he put the man on his own donkey, and he brought him to an inn, and he took care of him. The next day, he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper. Look after him, he said, and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense that you have. Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers? Jesus asked, and the expert in the law replied, the one who had mercy on him. Jesus told him, go and do likewise. Now, when Martin Luther King Jr. told this parable, he said, it's possible that the priest and the Levite looked over at the man on the ground and wondered if robbers were still around. Or it's possible that they felt that the man on the ground was merely faking, and he was acting like he'd been robbed and hurt in order to seize them over there, to lure them over for quick and easy capture. The first question which the priest and the Levite asked was, if I stop to help this man, what will happen to me? But the Good Samaritan reversed the question. If I do not stop to help this man, what will happen to him? Peter Gomes says in his book, The Scandalous Gospel of Jesus, that what makes the Samaritan of the gospel good in comparison to other not so good Samaritans is not who he is, but what he does. He shows mercy. He explains that the message is that the neighbor is the one who has an opportunity to do good to one who is in need. The neighbor's the one who has the opportunity to do good to one in need. As Arland Hultgren said, one cannot define one's neighbor, one can only be a neighbor. Our neighbor is anyone in need who can take the benefit of our compassion, and then it turns out the answer to the question, who's our neighbor, is you. You are the neighbor to anyone who is in need, who you have the ability to help. Now, in California this week, a high school student told a classmate, you support Trump. You hate Mexicans, before throwing her to the ground and hitting her. This is what stereotypes create on all sides. Let me tell you how the story of our member, Kayla, ended. After the man spewed hate on Kayla and the other woman, a man at the other counter came over and said, man, you better get out of here with all that. And the man full of hate left, laughing. The man behind the counter was apologetic. Ma'am, I'm sorry about that. Nodding also to the other woman in line. The 2 women hugged before they left the store. And thankfully, Kayla was coming here. And instead of working in the child care, she participated in our World Cafe on race. In this time of national division, let us not add to the discourse by stereotyping others. Not Mexicans, not Muslims, not Trump supporters. It's a great time to reach out in love, to support others, especially those who are made vulnerable by this current climate that we're in. It's an important time to be in community with others. I'm glad you showed up this morning, because if you didn't need it, The rest of us did. And it's good to see you. It's good to be together. And it's important that we try to reach out and talk and try to understand and not assume the worst in the people who may hold a different view than we do politically. But one thing that's unequivocal is that we should not ever tolerate hateful speech or acts or legislation that denies the human dignity or rights of anyone. The poem by Robert Frost says, "The dark is what brings out the light." May we be like stars in the sky that shine bright even and especially when it seems darkest. May we be vessels of resounding love and light, for the world needs it now. Our country needs it now. May we understand what it means to be neighbors. These are times when the mob is swayed to carry praise or blame too far. Let us choose something like a star to stay our minds on and be stayed. Go out into the world in peace, have courage, hold on to what is good, return to no person evil for evil, strengthen the faint-hearted, support the weak, help the suffering, honor all life. Go and be blessed and be a blessing. Amen.
We are your church, and we are proud to be your church, or at least a church that's having a positive impact on your life. I am personally blessed to be your minister, or at least a minister who you're allowing to speak into your life. I hope you'll support our ministry and share your love beyond belief by texting LOVE-BB to 41444 or go to our website. But you can just text LOVE-BB to 41444 and make your gift. It's wonderful. Thank you. Be blessed and be a blessing.